How did you learn Spanish? 6 years ago, I could barely say, hola, ¿cómo estás? Now, me considero completamente fluida. Like, I can speak with anybody and understand them. And like, even if I don't understand something, I know enough Spanish now that I can ask for clarification in Spanish and, work through a misunderstanding or something that I'm not understanding. So let me start with a little bit of my background. Whenever I went to college, I studied French and literature. So I've always loved to read. I've always loved language. English was always my favorite subject, and I read a lot just on my own. I started working at a Mexican restaurant in college, and so I feel like I kind of stumbled onto Spanish by accident. But basically, like, I was all in on French. I went to France, and I do speak French. I will say that I haven't used it in over 5 years, so it's probably pretty rusty. But my Spanish is definitely way better than my French, because all of my French I learned in a classroom. And so, when you learn in a class, you just don't really sound very natural. You sound really formal. You say things that people really wouldn't say. I remember one of the first days I was in France, and I walked downstairs. I lived with a host family. I walked downstairs and they said, "Coucou," which basically just means hey. But, hey is informal. And so I only knew how to say hello. And I was like, what does that mean? And they were like, it just means hello. I was like, oh. But anyways, I wanted to learn Spanish because I worked in a Mexican restaurant. I was pretty much the only one there who didn't speak Spanish. I think there was one other girl who also didn't speak Spanish, but I will say 95% of the staff all spoke Spanish. And it's not that they didn't speak English, because they do or did, but it's that the majority of the time, since Spanish is their first language, they were speaking to each other in Spanish. And so I really started learning because I just wanted to know what they were talking about. I was just curious, and so I just started learning little phrases. I was a server, so I learned things like, they want their steak well done, or please put the rice and beans on the side. Like, I just learned kitchen words, basically. So, like, first steps for me, I wouldn't say, like, I've never taken a class. I basically just started really immersing myself. Like, obviously I was working at the restaurant, so I had people to practice with, but I don't think that's enough. I was also doing Duolingo. I also started listening to Spanish music, mostly because that's what they played in the restaurant. So it's kind of funny because my music taste still in Spanish to this day is pretty much what they listen to in the restaurant, which is like classic Mexican banda, corridos, like the old classic Mexican music, and then also reggaeton, because on the bar side they would play reggaeton, and then on the restaurant side they would play like banda and stuff like that. So that's still like my favorite music, honestly, in Spanish. But that was a huge help because you can listen to music and not understand anything they're saying and still enjoy it. So I started listening to a lot of music. The first artists that I really liked were J Balvin, Bad Bunny, people like Banda MS, Calibre 50. It was really hard for me at first. I know there was a period for over a year where I felt really frustrated because I would hang out with my friends, and especially when they talked to each other, I wouldn't understand anything. And so it was like they would have to talk and then take a pause and then translate to me, because I'd be sitting there going, wait, what'd they say? What'd they say? And it's like I could speak in very small snippets, but I definitely couldn't express myself. And I also couldn't understand everything that was being said. And it was frustrating because I was trying so hard every day to learn. And I was just like, ugh, like, when am I going to be fluent? This is taking forever. But I feel like, I don't know if I had one moment where I was like, oh, I get it now. But I think over time I just felt more and more comfortable. And I think really the moment for me is whenever you don't understand something, but you get to the point where you can ask more to understand more fully in Spanish, that's when I felt like, okay, like, I know enough now that I have a good base that I can build upon. I know enough that I could speak to a native speaker who doesn't speak any English and ask enough questions to be able to understand. But I feel like that really took, I don't know, a year and a half, 2 years before I really got to that point. And that was me being pretty immersed. Maybe a year, I'm not really sure. But I will say there's been like multiple points where I'm like, oh, my Spanish is good, it's never gonna get any better. But I've continually seen improvement. Like even still, I think my Spanish is still improving. My boyfriend is from El Salvador, and I will say they have a pretty neutral accent, but they've got like jerga and slang that I'm still learning. And when they talk to each other, it's still very difficult for me to understand, and some of them do have accents. And I feel like I'm still learning. Like I definitely can still see improvements in my Spanish to this day. I'm trying to think if there were any like really funny misunderstandings. I know that there have been several, but I don't know if I can think of one specific example where I really messed up. How it changed my life, relationships, career, confidence. Well, I feel like I've had a lot more job opportunities from learning Spanish. I worked for a while at a law firm as a bilingual receptionist, and that was really gratifying to be able to work with Hispanic people because I really eventually want to do something helping Hispanic people, like connecting the gap, because I feel like there's a gap between the Hispanic culture we have here in the US specifically and then Americans who were born in the US. I don't know. I just think there's a misunderstanding gap, and I'd like to help bridge that gap if I can. But I think it's made me, I've been able to understand people who are different than me. Obviously, I feel like, I don't know, when you learn another language, you also learn so much about the culture. Like, there's a lot of cultural difference between specifically Mexico and the US, and I learned a ton. And I feel like it's made me a more empathetic person. It's made me broaden my horizons because I could see myself moving to Latin America pretty much anywhere. Like my top would be El Salvador, Colombia, and Mexico as of right now. But there's a lot of beautiful countries, and learning the language is a huge plus. Like it just opens up your travel. In 2024, I actually spent 6 months just traveling in Latin America, and it was amazing. And I could have done it if I didn't speak Spanish, but I felt way more safe doing it, you know, as a native, well, not a native, as someone who's fluent in Spanish, because you're able to understand everything that everybody's saying around you, so you never feel like, you know, you're in danger when you're in a, I didn't take any taxis, but when you're in an Uber or, you know, there's just situations where it's very helpful. Also, I will say Hispanic people are so welcoming and just friendly and open. I don't think Hispanics get treated the same way. Like I think when Hispanic people learn English, a lot of times they're met with hostility or annoyance, which is really unfortunate. But Mexicans, anybody from Latin America, I've always been met with just like joy and friendliness and just kind of like a joy to help me learn. I don't know. I think it's a really community-based culture, and they're just like very fun people. Well, it's also changed my life because my boyfriend is from El Salvador. When we met at least, he spoke very little English. So when we first met, we only spoke in Spanish, and he's actually learned a ton of English since we've been dating. We've only been together 8 months, I think. Yeah, 8 months. And now he can have conversations with my family because my family doesn't speak any Spanish, or very little. And he's learned a ton just from being around me. But like, I wouldn't have been able to date him or meet him at all if I didn't speak Spanish. So I also have a ton of friends who only speak Spanish. So I think it just broadens your horizons in general, whether it's relationships, career, confidence. Like it's cool to be able to go to Mexico and order your food in Spanish. No, they don't expect it. Like you can tell when someone's a tourist, and people love it when people are always surprised whenever I just start speaking in Spanish. They're like, "What, are you Mexican?" Or why do you know Spanish? Like, it's very, I think it's a very unique thing. I know it wouldn't be like if I lived in Europe, but we're not in Europe, and unfortunately Americans just don't learn other languages like Europeans do. Anyways, I don't know. I feel like it's something that anybody could do if they really wanted to, and for me it's been really gratifying, and I really do feel like it's changed my life in multiple ways. But yeah, I would recommend it to anybody. You can make more money if you speak a second language too. So yeah, I guess I feel like I should speak some Spanish to like prove myself. So I'll just like do a quick intro. Soy Emily, yo aprendí español trabajando en un restaurante en Missouri que se llama Cantina Bravo. Trabajé allá más o menos 4 años y nunca tomé una clase. Aprendí todo yo solo, viendo series en Netflix en español, escuchando música, hablando con gente que habla en español nativo. Y pues sí,